The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Saturday at 10 a.m. Karen spent Friday night preparing her ultimate weapon. She'd found it buried in the original HOA charter from 1987, Article 15, Section C. In cases of gross negligence or willful destruction of community standards, the HOA board reserves the right to recommend dissolution of individual property ownership agreements. In layman's terms, she could get them all evicted. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling. The community center was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls. Karen had never seen so many neighbors in one place. The energy was electric, hostile. David Chen called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the recent surge in violations and complaints. Karen, would you like to explain your actions?" Karen stood, clutching her leather portfolio. Every eye in the room fixed on her. She dreamed of moments like this, commanding attention, wielding authority. So why did her hands shake? "What I've done," she began, her voice carrying clearly, "is enforce the standards that make this community exceptional. Standards that protect our property values and our way of life. You fined me for my kid's chalk art." Someone shouted from the back. "Sidewalk defacement is clearly prohibited. It was hopscotch. My husband's dying, and you're worried about flower colors." Mrs. Johnson's voice broke. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, anger spilling over. Karen tried to speak louder, but the crowd drowned her out. "Quiet." David's voice cut through the chaos. "Karen, do you have anything else to say?" This was her moment. Karen opened her portfolio and pulled out the charter. "I invoke Article 15, Section C. I'm recommending the dissolution of property agreements for 37 households due to willful violation of community standards." The room went dead silent. "You're trying to evict us," someone whispered. "I'm trying to save what's left of this community." Karen's voice was steady now, certain. "Some of you have made it clear you don't want to follow the rules that maintain our standards. Fine, but you can't stay here and destroy what the rest of us have built." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Mrs. Johnson stood up, tears streaming down her face. 15 years ago, when my tummy was born premature, you organized meal trains for 2 months. You drove me to the hospital when Jack couldn't leave work. You helped us plant our first garden." Her voice shook. "What happened to that person?" Karen felt something crack inside her chest. That was different." "No, it wasn't. That was community. This," Mrs. Johnson gestured around the room, "this is just control." One by one, people began to leave, not storming out in anger, but walking away quietly, sadly. Karen watched her neighbors file past, avoiding her eyes. The Patels, who'd invited her to their daughter's wedding. The Martinez family, whose son had mowed her lawn when she'd broken her ankle. The Hendersons, who'd brought her soup when she'd had the flu. David was the last to approach her. "Karen, the board's going to meet tomorrow to discuss your recommendation, but I think you should know. Jessica Romano submitted her resignation this morning. She said she couldn't work in a community where neighbors weaponize rules against each other." "Good," Karen said automatically, but her voice sounded hollow even to herself. "Is it?" David studied her face. "You've won, Karen. You've proven you can make all of us miserable. But what exactly have you won?" After everyone left, Karen sat alone in the empty community center. Through the windows, she could see her neighborhood. Neat lawns, matching mailboxes, perfectly aligned driveways, everything exactly as she'd designed it. So why did it feel like she was looking at a graveyard? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Sold the news about Willowbrook Estates online. HOA disputes make great content. Interested in telling your side of the story? Channel 7 News." Karen stared at the message. News. Someone had contacted the media. Her perfect neighborhood was about to become a cautionary tale, a punchline. But as she sat in the gathering darkness, a new thought crept in. Maybe that wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Maybe the worst thing had already begun. By Thursday morning, Karen had filed 17 formal complaints. She'd reported the Johnsons for their excessively vibrant yellow tulips, the Martinez family for a lawnmower that was 1 decibel above community standards, and somehow found violations for everyone who'd voted against her. Her masterpiece was citing David Chen himself for an unauthorized door wreath that had been hanging there since Christmas. "This is harassment," David said when he called her directly. His voice was tired, strained. "Karen, we can work together on this." Work together. Karen sat in her home office, surrounded by neighborhood bylaws spread across every surface. "You voted me out and installed some child to run my association. The only thing we're working toward is your resignation." Look, the board felt new leadership might. The board felt wrong. Karen's fingers flew across her keyboard, drafting another violation notice. "I've found some interesting discrepancies in your property survey, David. Seems your fence might be 6 inches over the property line. That's impossible. We had it professionally measured. Not by HOA-approved surveyors. That's a $500 fine, plus removal costs." She hit send with satisfaction. "Oh, and your mailbox is the wrong shade of black. Another $200. "Karen, this is insane." She hung up and immediately called the city planning office. "Yes, I'd like to report unpermitted construction on Maple Street." The next morning brought chaos. Karen watched from her window as 3 different city vehicles arrived in the neighborhood. Code enforcement, surveying, and her personal favorite, animal control, investigating her noise complaint about the Henderson's dog. Her phone buzzed constantly. Angry texts, voicemails, even a few neighbors showing up at her door. She ignored them all, methodically working through her list. By noon, Jessica Romano was back, looking significantly less cheerful. "Ms. Whitmore, we've received 43 complaints in 2 days. This has to stop." "I'm simply ensuring compliance with community standards," Karen replied sweetly. "Isn't that what you wanted? Strict enforcement? You're filing false reports. The Patel's garden hose isn't a trip hazard, and Mrs. Wilson's bird feeder doesn't violate any ordinances. Everything's documented. Every violation is legitimate according to the bylaws I wrote." Karen held up a thick binder. "Would you like me to walk you through each one?" Jessica's professional composure cracked. "You're destroying this community out of spite. I'm saving this community from incompetence." Karen's voice rose. 15 years I've maintained property values, kept standards high, made this the most desirable neighborhood in the county. Then you people waltz in with your fresh perspectives and democratic processes, and suddenly I'm the villain. You fined a woman for having the wrong shade of white on her shutters. Eggshell, not cream. The guidelines are specific. That evening, Karen received an unexpected visitor. David Chen stood on her doorstep, but he wasn't alone. Behind him were the Johnsons, the Martinez family, the Patels, and half a dozen other neighbors. "We need to talk," David said quietly. Karen looked at the crowd, their angry faces illuminated by her porch light. For a moment, something flickered in her chest. Fear? Regret? But then she saw Jessica Romano standing at the back of the group, and her resolve hardened. "My lawyer says I don't have to talk to anyone," she lied smoothly. "But you're all trespassing on my property. I'd move along before I call the police." "Karen," Mrs. Johnson stepped forward, her voice pleading. "We've been neighbors for 10 years. My husband's in the hospital, and you're fining us for flowers. For flowers we planted to cheer him up?" Something twisted in Karen's stomach, but she pushed it down. Rules don't have exemptions for personal circumstances. The group dispersed slowly, muttering among themselves. As David walked away, he turned back. "This isn't over, Karen. We're calling an emergency board meeting." Standing alone on her porch, Karen felt the weight of the neighborhood silence. Every house seemed to lean away from hers, windows dark and unwelcoming. But she'd been right before, and she was right now. Someone had to maintain standards. She just hadn't expected war to feel so lonely. Karen Whitmore stood in her pristine driveway at 6:47 a.m., clutching a yellow citation notice like it was written in blood. Her perfectly manicured nails trembled as she read the words again. Viola Unauthorized garden gnome display. Fine. $150. Human AUTAORISED. She shrieked. causing Mrs. Henderson's cat to bolt across 3 lawns. I am the authorization. The gnome in question, a cheerful fellow with a fishing rod, sat innocently beside her prize-winning roses. Karen had been Willowbrook Estates' HOA president for 3 years, and never had anyone dared find her. She whipped out her phone and speed-dialed the HOA office. Margaret, this is Karen. What is the meaning of, what do you mean you're not Margaret? Who is this? The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. Yamda. This is Jessica Romano, the new HOA manager. And you are? Karen's eye twitched. I'm Karen Whitmore. The Karen Whitmore. HOA President Karen Whitmore. Oh, Ms. Whitmore, yes. About your gnome situation. There is no gnome situation. Karen's voice pitched higher. I wrote the landscaping guidelines myself. Actually, you were voted out last Tuesday. The new board implemented a strict no lawn ornaments policy. Didn't you get the memo? The phone slipped from Karen's fingers, clattering onto the concrete. Voted out. Impossible. She ran this neighborhood like a Swiss watch. She knew every blade of grass, every mailbox regulation, every permitted paint color by heart. Marching to her computer, Karen pulled up the HOA portal. There it was, in black and white. Election results. Karen Whitmore, 12 votes. David Chen, 47 votes. Wayynel. David Chen. David Chen, she whispered, the name tasting bitter. The new guy from Maple Street who'd moved in 6 months ago, and immediately started asking questions about her carefully crafted rules. Her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw Jessica Romano, a 20-something with an annoyingly bright smile and a clipboard. Hi, I'm here about the gnome. Jessica chirped when Karen opened the door. It needs to be removed by noon, or the fine doubles. That gnome, Karen said slowly, has been in my garden for 2 years. 2 years of perfection, maintaining property values, ensuring neighborhood standards. I understand this is frustrating, but rules are rules. Karen's laugh was sharp. Rules. Oh, honey, I am the rules. I've lived here for 15 years. I've served on this board since before you could spell homeowner. You have no idea what you're messing with. Jessica's smile wavered. Ma'am, I'm just doing my job. Your job? Karen stepped closer. Your job is about to become very, very difficult. After Jessica left, Karen stood in her living room, surrounded by 3 years' worth of HOA documentation, violation notices she'd issued, and meeting minutes. Her empire, her legacy, all threatened by some corporate puppet and a board of traitors. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Time to remind this neighborhood exactly who Karen Whitmore was.